Good afternoon and welcome to AP European History with Mr. Bovey. Today we will be discussing sections 4 and 5 of Chapter 16 in the McKay, Hill, and Buckler text, 7th edition, Absolutism and Constitutionalism, in Western Europe. And today we will be focusing in on King Louis XIV's wars and what they led to for France, and then the Spanish decline. So, we've already talked about Louis XIV and the massive impact that he's had on France, and today we'll be talking about his wars of territorial aggression. Um, it is reputed that on his deathbed, Louis utters the phrase, "I have gone to war too lightly and pursued it for vanity's sake," making us think that maybe he learned something from it, because really in the end, all of the war does not do France a lot of good. Louis waged a series of wars, 33 of the 54 years of his personal rule. Between 1635 and 1659, his army grew from 25,000 to 250,000 troops. And he really wanted to expand his territory, and he really wanted the people of the world to feel France as the epicenter, specifically of Europe. A couple of names come into play here. His Secretary of State for War, Francois Letellier, okay, later known as the Marquis de Louvois. Okay, he created a professional army for France and recruited in all kinds of ways. Dragooning, which was basically pulling people off the streets, usually people who were drunks or homeless. This wasn't a very popular way of doing things. Conscription or enlistment, lottery, and then also hiring foreign mercenaries. And then Jean Martinet was kind of the military leader right under Louis, because Louis had a very personal role in all of this and in leading the army. Louis took command directly, supervised military affairs, and was never really ever satisfied. France was finally in the position uh, to take some territorial gains, and Louis seized the opportunity. A few things that happen in France that are very significant in military history. One, perhaps one of the most significant, is an ambulance corps. Prior to this, the wounded, many of the wounded died of disease and infection on the field, laying there. He creates this idea of medics that are actually a full-time part of any military unit. Standard uniforms and weapons, system of training and promotion that we have today. And then he starts in on his military conquest. He invades Flanders. We know that Flanders is that part of the Netherlands that is closest to England via the English Channel, and starts out with about 12 towns. And then 6 more years of war. The Dutch thwart some of the efforts by opening the dikes and basically flooding and destroying their land. And the Holy Roman Empire and Spain get involved, and this ends with the Treaty of Nijmegen. And he gains further parts of Flanders. He then gains Strasbourg in 1681 and Lorraine in 1684, but these would be the last successful attempts at expanding France. The League of Augsburg is formed, and that's an alliance of European monarchs. And a series of financial problems. Obviously, many of the absolute rulers ran into financial problems and taxation, peasant revolts, and starvation due to bad harvests. All will plague France and really make it more difficult for Louis to gain any other territories. The War of Spanish Succession, 1701 to 1713. Charles II of Spain is a Habsburg, and he is mentally defective. In 1698, he signs a Treaty of Division, and France is one of the countries that agrees to this, and they agree to parcel out the Spanish Empire between the King of France and the Holy Roman Empire. who was Charles's the second's brother-in-law. Charles, however, in his will, transfers the throne to Philip of Anjou, okay, the grandson of Louis XIV. Instead of going with the Treaty of Division, Louis accepts the will, and Philip becomes Philip V, King of Spain. And this is really disconcerting to all of the other powers in Europe because for the first time in history, Spain and France are now joined in a potential supernation status. Well, this sets off all kinds of other diplomatic things into play, and the Grand Alliance is formed. England, the Dutch Netherlands, Austria, Prussia, they ally against France and Spain with two major goals: preventing France from becoming too strong in Europe and checking France's expanding commercial power as they are starting to take hold of colonies in other places in Europe. Two great soldiers are mentioned in having a direct impact on thwarting French efforts. Eugene of Savoy, excuse me, for the Holy Roman Empire, and John Churchill, the Duke of Marlborough, for England. They fight successfully and win battles that basically make the War of Spanish Succession a failure for the French. And this could really be considered one of the first global wars, international wars. It was fought in Germany, the Netherlands, Italy, Spain. It was fought in the colonies, and it was fought at sea. The Treaty of Utrecht in 1713 ends the War of Spanish Succession, and the most significant thing here is that it represents the balance of power principle, and this idea that countries in Europe are not going to stand for one country gaining too much power over the other countries. Outcomes: England and the Netherlands agree to recognize Philip as the King of Spain. France agrees not to unite with Spain under one crown. The French surrender territories in North America, as well as territories in Spain, and Spain loses control of the African slave trade. The significance: the Treaty of Utrecht really symbolizes the demise of Spain as a great power. Spain had now gone through their golden age and was in for some much tougher times, and kind of falls off the map as far as being a major player in European affairs overall. This vastly expands the British Empire, and it marks the end of French expansion. So the Treaty of Utrecht, War of Spanish Succession, very significant events. The decline of Spain. As I just mentioned, this Treaty of Utrecht really symbolizes that decline. They had had a powerful monarchy with all of the things that an absolutist monarchy has: bureaucracy, standing army, national taxes, tremendous stores of gold and silver. However, they lack a strong middle class, with the result of expulsion of the Jews and the Moors. There's a big agricultural crisis, failure to invest in productive enterprises, and the Dutch and English really do their part too as they cut into trade, and trade for the Spanish falls off about 60% from their colonies. And as with most absolutist countries, royal expenditures far exceed the income that is coming in, leading to tremendous amounts of debt. Your text and many scholars would allude to the fact that Spain lacks good leadership, and this is very easy to say, but may be overshadowed by the question of how any leader would overcome a lot of these issues and a lot of these problems that Spain had overlooked for so long. Coinage was devalued, bankruptcy was declared several times, debt was canceled, and this really spiraled Spain's economy to the depths. Okay, the flood of gold and silver produced inflation. Spanish textiles were too expensive on the international market, and they could not compete. And the Spanish just did not keep up with the most current technology in order to be competitive with some of the other major textile producers of the day, specifically the English. They had a very small middle class, and they continued weakening the Habsburg line. Excessive inbreeding, lacking the will to reform and change for the new times, and pessimism and fatalism, which we recall was started with the defeat of the Spanish Armada by Queen Elizabeth. Finally, as I just mentioned, Spain ignores a lot of new ideas and new technology. England and Holland begin to overrun them as far as their competition overseas. The 30 Years' War is detrimental, and they're defeated by the French in the French and Spanish Wars. All of these things cost Spain a terrible amount of money. Their economy continues to spiral, and they surrender extensive territories, and it really marks the end of Spain as a great power. And this section of your text is summed up with a brief explanation and motivation of the book Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes, and that really exemplifies this kind of wandering, impractical mode of living that had been set up by the Spanish. And the term quixotic is coined, and that's idealistic but impractical. And that really, unfortunately, sums up what Spain will continue to go through as they try and recover a little bit of their dignity after being so high up for so long, for a century, a golden age, and then falling to the depths in its aftermath.